Hi everyone. Today I'm thrilled to be joined with Jane Morgan, who is the founder of Gendelity. And Jane's going to tell us all about Gendelity because I have an idea, but it'll be great to hear more about it. And really, what we're talking about today is, I guess, one of my favorite subjects, and one that I come across a lot with the women that I work with in relation to confidence, and how our confidence can dip as we go through the transition in menopause. And really, what Jane is going to talk to us about today is empowering yourself and having the confidence to negotiate your way through the workplace. So welcome, Jane, and thanks for
Thanks very
joining
much.
us. Thanks for joining us today. So I guess to start, tell us about Gendelity.
Okay, yeah, so Gendelity was born of frustration, really. I have always been a strong advocate for women in the workplace. But I had an experience with a family member, young scientist. She was early career and she got absolutely outrageously bad um, advice around negotiating her salary at work, and I just saw red. I thought there's so much that's known about women in the workplace, about confidence, and how the workplace is not made for women. And I thought this is really ridiculous, that we should have a better mechanism of sharing this information with women. So Gendelity was born, it's gender and equality kind of shoved together, gendelity.com, and we're running it as a social enterprise, so not for profit, with the objective of helping both organisations but also individuals to make workplaces more gender inclusive. And the nice thing about gender inclusion is workplaces that are good for women are also good for other minorities, whether it's disability or racial minorities. So that those other aspects are also important, but we're leading with the gender piece of it. So this young scientist inspired me to say, okay, we have to do this better, communicate the information. So that was one piece of it. And then the other piece specifically related to a course that we're currently running about negotiating, empowering women to negotiate, is based on a course that was run by the American University Association for Women. And Boston City in Massachusetts decided that they wanted to reduce their gender pay gap.
Okay.
And so they collaborated with the American University and developed this course together with the University of Massachusetts, first ran it as a pilot. And the objective really was to help women, get over that confidence piece. Because unfortunately, a lot of women are socialized, to be the good girl, stay at home, not to ask too many questions, and, be invited into space rather than making your own space.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, that builds a lot of anxiety when you find yourself, okay, now I have to. So it's an evidence-based course, road tested across several private sector organizations in the US, with the objective of decreasing the gender pay gap. And there is unfortunately some poor advice out there that doesn't align with the evidence of what actually works for women in the workplace. So we're addressing that piece of the barriers that women come up against that are not there for men. So that's kind of the
Okay.
foundation of Gendelity and the negotiation course that we're running for women at the moment.
And do you what like I say, from my perspective, my background, before Wellness Warrior, I was in the corporate world for a long time, and obviously I know the issues that have existed in the gender pay gap, and I know, yes, definitely progress has been made, and so forth. But what are your views, though, in relation to Ireland today? Is it
Mm.
is it is there pockets of workplaces that are making progress, or is it still as big, because I remember when I was in the corporate world, it was very much a thing to make sure that there was equal equal pay, male and female. um but I don't know, like, does that in Ireland, does how far reaching
Well,
do you see that going?
yeah, I mean, I think there's much greater awareness around it, but
Hmm.
we're not anywhere near where we need to be. So the
Okay.
gender pay gap in Ireland, which is taking all of the women in the working population and all the men in the working population and saying how does that marry up? The gender pay gap there is about 84%. So the
Wow, wow,
yeah,
really?
yeah.
Oh
So
my
80
God.
so
Yeah.
women earn 84 cent on average for the euro that men earn. Now, there's a few things
Yeah.
behind that, and a lot of that. These things are very critical for women in mid career, 40s onward. It's important for all women to be able to negotiate, I think, not only about pay, but um, let's talk particularly about pay for a minute. Um, but particularly for women in that mid-career piece, because that's where we see the brain drain.
Yeah.
So there's a really interesting study done by Deloitte, and they were seeing mid-career women, menopausal women, um, leaving the organization, and they thought, oh, they're
Hmm.
all going home to mind the kids. And they did the study, and actually what they discovered was that they weren't leaving the workforce at all. They were moving to other organizations that had better flexibility,
Okay.
better at allowing parents to flourish, career wise, also flourish, as well as acknowledging other responsibilities. So so that's one aspect of it, the 84 cent versus the euro cent. And certainly there are some workplaces that are better there than others. But the other piece of it is in Ireland, we have, say, in the academic space, the universities now have a tennis swan where if you don't have some kind of sort of baseline and an action plan to address gender inequality,
Hmm.
that you won't get your research funding. And
Okay.
similarly, in the public sector, they can set targets. Leo Varadkar or Micheál Martin or whoever it is can set the target and say, this is what we're going to do. So, in both the public sector and in academia, they have been making quite good progress. Now,
Okay.
some better than other spaces. But the private sector is a little bit different. The industrial market, if you will, the business market. So in that space, there continues to be is 14% of a gap there. So for every euro
Okay.
that the average chap in the private sector workplace is earning, the woman is being paid 14% less. And a key thing there is around promotions. It's there's more men in senior positions,
Mm.
and
Yeah.
therefore
Yeah.
men
Yeah.
in better paid positions. So
Yeah.
it's important
Yeah.
that women are able to get a piece of that pie. So
Yeah. 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 And it is definitely I mean, that's kind of, that's a big conversation in terms of women on the career ladder, and definitely, I mean, I've seen that firsthand, the challenges that comes with, and I think
mm,
definitely, like, do you remember there was that famous photograph, I think about 6 7 months ago, where there was a meeting, I think it was in the public health, about women's health, and every single person in the room was a
was a
man.
man.
And you just kind of think, oh, come on,
Yeah,
seriously,
yeah.
so certainly, yeah, yeah, we definitely have have a way to go
Mm,
on that front. And what do you say in terms of, because I would see firsthand, Jane, on a daily basis. I work with women where confidence is a huge issue,
mm,
um, where they're just maybe, because of brain fog, different things, they just don't feel as confident at work, full
yeah.
stop. So then to have the confidence to go and have any kind of a conversation with their employer, it can be very difficult.
Mm.
Um, so do you have any advice there in
Yeah, well,
terms of?
I think the anxiety piece is important. I'd be interested to
Mm,
hear, what's your sense of the anxiety piece around
well, massive,
menopause and
massive.
mid-career?
Mm. like it's massive. Now it's not, again, it's not for not every woman, of course, but many women will feel that. I was working with a woman last week, and she was basically saying to me how she literally is she gets so nervous when, even with COVID now at the moment, she's going into the office, not on a daily basis, but she'd go in once a week. And she said it's nerve-wracking because and why it's nerve-wracking for her is, she said, if her employer and her manager asks her a question and she doesn't have the answer because of her brain fog, then she just feels, oh my God. And she just said she just goes down really quick.
Yeah.
And she's nervous already because she's afraid she won't have any answers. And she said, and plus two, he is the kind of manager that does just kind of come and ask, questions like at the drop of a hat. And she's finding that really, really difficult.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, the average stat is that, 51% of men say they've negotiated something in the workplace, whereas only 43% of women have. And we also know that, the women, the socialization piece, that there is a penalty for women, being seen as too push. The participants on the course now, I'm afraid I'll be seen as greedy, all around that kind of area. So that's one whole piece of it. And then the other whole piece is like getting the sentence out, what do I say? So it's like many things in life. It's thinking about it in advance and practicing, and having a few stock phrases. So there's kind of three reasons that you'd want to negotiate. Resolution. There's something that is on the resources on the team. We haven't got enough capacity to do that, or will we do this project or that project, or should John do it or Mary do it? So there's resolution to an existing problem. And then, but there's also your personal career needs. I mean, if there's three aspects around career. One is your social capital, your network. You need to build that. You need to have good, strong, collaborative relationships. So your client, for example, wants to have a strong working relationship with her manager. And another is knowledge around formal skills, really, education and practice, certification, those kind of things. And the other then is the skills of what you want to do. So you want to be negotiating all of those three aspects so that you put yourself in a strong position from a career perspective. So I think frameworks like that can help you from an anxiety perspective and a confidence perspective. What is it that I'm going to do? If I'm building a Venn diagram here in the air, those three things overlap. So I think for dealing with anxiety in a conversation with with your manager, like your client in that example, is really to have prepared a few stock phrases. And one of the things that we do in the workshop is look at what's a stock phrase that you can live with. Because it's very important to have that practice. You don't want to say a sentence that just feels, oh my God, I've picked that off of some TV program, and
or it feels false or something.
Feels false, yeah. So a sentence might be like, that's a great question, I'll get back to you tomorrow about that. Just defer. You're not fobbing them off, you're being thoughtful. So one of and the other thing is asking for help when you need it. I mean, there's very interesting research around if you ask someone who's an expert in the area, so your boss, for advice, about a difficult future task. So those two things are important, something that's not obvious and is in the future. So it's going to be actionable for the person that you ask. And you ask them for help, so you've tackled this issue before. How would you address it? And that actually improves your standing in the eyes of the person that you're speaking to. So I think for your client, or in other examples, it's, what are my stock phrases so that I can get it down on the page and then give myself the space in some kind of a framework to think about it, and then come back with the answer, And anxiety, I think, is similar, because your brain just goes,
Yeah, yeah, and I think that's now obviously with COVID at the moment we are in different situations. For many women who are working from home, but
Yeah,
that it's still conversations still need to be had in terms
yeah,
of, or like, so say for example when women were in the workplace. There's different challenges. It may be the hot flushes when they can't control the aircon. Maybe where they're sitting is intense light, or
yeah,
maybe there's not enough water available, different things like that.
yeah,
Now with working from home, there's different stresses because you don't know what the home environment is like, and it's the fact of the challenges of homeschooling. There might be Wi-Fi issues that you can't connect, and it might be frustration. We also know, and we've seen, the stats sadly, that like domestic abuse
yeah, yeah,
is a huge issue at the moment. So it also needs to be taken into account the fact that women need to be able to talk to managers about the stresses that they're facing, and that goes, it's different stresses whether it's COVID or in the
yeah,
actual workplace. But I think it's being able to bring that conversation to the table, and like you said, I think having key phrases there is a gem of a tip, because
mm,
you can defer back to that if you kind of you lose your train of thought, or you
yeah,
know
yeah.
or something
Yeah,
happens.
well, so you've got to ask for what you need, and you need to find that phrase that works for you. I read Caitlin Moran's More Than a Woman book recently, definitely for our age group, and I really enjoyed it. Now, Caitlin Moran, I know, is not for everybody and she can be very edgy, but I did love, she went to her manager and she was asking, as it happens, for a pay rise, and she was totally, up the walls, anxiety, couldn't get the sentence out, and very nice manager. And anyway, the two pieces of advice that he gave her were: firstly, people never just give you money or power; you always have to ask. And secondly, the way big institutions show that they really love you is with cash. Now, I'm not sure that that's totally true in every space. I think good managers also show you care by flexibility, but you don't necessarily want to assume that, Mary's having difficulty because the 7-year old is freaking out with homeschooling. So you do need to ask for what you need, and there's preparation there, ideally. So there's three things. So we have an ACT framework, later on in the course, and it's ambitious, collaborative, and tenacious. And it's deliberately called ACT because you might be highly motivated to, I have got to solve this problem, I am so underwater here, and you need to take action. Um, so when you get to that action point, that's where I think be ambitious, because women typically under ask. Collaborative, it's a negotiation with whoever it is. So in that case of the aircon, well, I am overheating and there's only so much clothes I can take off in the office, whereas you can put a jumper on. So there is that finding things that work for everybody. So you always want to bear in mind who the person is on the other end, whether it's about aircon or getting the plum assignment, or looking for a new job title. And the other thing for women is being tenacious. Unfortunately, many of us are socialized to say no. They just go, no, you can push back. I mean, I love the Sheryl Sandberg story from Lean In, and she was giving a talk after she'd published the book and all this in some big university. I can't remember where it was, and she said, "Okay, last question now," and the audience can. So she took the last hand up in the air, and the audience continued to ask questions. So she continued to answer them. And afterwards, the person who was with her said, well, you know what I learned today is when you said last question, all the women put their hands down. And the guys just kept going until she said, okay, time's up, and walked off. And she was like, oh my God, here I am saying lean in, in this environment, totally structured
That's
around that.
very
And yet women
interesting,
still
isn't it?
went, yeah. So
Wow.
so tenacious is important. Now that doesn't
Yeah.
mean you're snotty or horrible.
Mm.
It's
Yeah.
and that's the other thing I think that women kind of tend to think, oh my God, it's this is a fight. It's not a fight.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
It
I
is finding ways to
I think it's
navigate through it
and it's been quietly, firmly confident, isn't
quietly,
it?
firmly.
You
Yes.
know, it's like knowing your own power, that
Yeah.
and plus the value that you bring, because
Yeah.
like obviously given my work, I'm working with women who've got huge experience, huge wisdom, so
Yeah.
much to give to any workplace.
Yeah.
And that's one thing I think when women are hit with some of the challenging symptoms of menopause, they lose that. They become very wobbly in terms of their self-esteem and their confidence. And it's a conversation I have every day, and I think it's really, really important that we keep ourselves empowered, and
Yeah.
we have to have these conversations, because whether it's pay, whether it's your working environment, whether it's your working hours, as you said, if you don't ask, well, things won't just land on your desk or whatever.
Yeah.
With that, we have to ask, and we have to kind of start a conversation.
Mm. I mean, I think the other thing about confidence is, they've done research in your ex industry now, more so than other spaces perhaps, where early career women have said, up for leadership, yep, very
Mm,
interested, and then
mm,
you get into it
mm.
and you see what it actually means, and you kind
Yeah,
of go,
yeah,
I'm not sure I'm up for that.
yeah,
So
yeah.
confidence and aspiration for leadership does decrease somewhat, not a huge amount, but somewhat in women. Um, and I think it's partly because they see the reality of it.
Mm,
But that's the exact stage when, as you said, you have loads of skills to give to the organization. Maybe you're just that little bit more experienced. So you
yeah.
want to, find a way to bring that experience, to the table. And I suppose I also think that, there's so many skills that employers and managers want to foster in teams, and confidence is a skill, and
Yeah.
confidence can be built and practiced. So I personally would like to see those managers who have, you have 50-50 in your team, hopefully. And what is it that's holding your team back from developing? And if the guy needs to be, we'll be real stereotypical here, we'd say, the guy needs to be more sensitive, that he's railroading people in the thing, and the girl needs more confidence. Well, you need to help him with his social capital to work collaboratively, and you need to
Hmm.
help her with her social capital to work collaboratively. But hers is about confidence building, and his
Hmm.
is about, you know letting the
Yeah.
empathy in. So
Yeah.
I would like to see organizations tasks with that. But in the meantime, for women, mid career, when the world is your oyster, we have to deal with the environment that we're in, and try and bring it forward.
Mm,
So.
mm, mm. And I remember, and I was some way along the the many years as being a manager. I always remember I used to kind of have this thought that it was always hire someone who's better than you. When you're interviewing someone, and in terms of we all would have challenges or different things that we're working at, but I always remember that in terms of obviously I was a great supporter of women,
Yeah.
but equal I would have had equally men and women on my teams and so forth. But I do always remember that in terms of being able to acknowledge my weaknesses and see the strengths in somebody else. And I think that's really important, like you said there, for managers, male or female. And if they've something that they're not comfortable with, like obviously for me, I will talk to many managers, and this isn't just male, this is female as well, where it's younger female managers who maybe you might have a female manager, and she might be, say, 35, 36, and she might have a member of her team who's going through menopause, and she may not be experienced at all in terms of what that entails. And obviously, when it comes to that conversation, it has to be the disclosure at the employee's perspective. But
Yeah.
it's very much, it's really key to understand what it entails, from so that you have the understanding for
Yeah.
anyone that you're working with.
I mean, menopause is an interesting example because we all, there's a great variety in the range of symptoms that people,
Yeah,
some people have
yeah.
total cakewalk, it's grand, didn't
Yeah,
even notice it. And then other people are like, oh my good Lord,
yeah.
So, we have this stereotypical idea, which personally, I often find the stereotypes are a good starting point. I obviously used one
Mm,
there about my men, but you can't assume that anybody's in that box. You have to
yeah,
tune to the individual,
yeah,
tune to the
yeah,
individual,
yeah, yeah.
including yourself, what
Hmm.
works for me, what works for you. So, I mean, one of the very nice things about working in teams, or in, for example, negotiating in our workshop is you get to hear the individual different experiences, and
Mm,
the women participate in our workshop have an opportunity to get a perspective from each other on how I what I would suggest to you. The dog agrees with me. um so it's like you say in the team, as the team lead, you can't assume, oh, it's hot flushes and they're grand. I think you need to do that one-on-one piece, because we're all individuals at the end of the day, and finding what works for us individually, and what works for the person who we're negotiating individually is very important. And there's nothing like that live interaction feedback, to figure out, okay, where's my opportunity to collaborate now in the negotiation piece. What can I do for you? What can you do for me? How do we find something that accommodates both of us?
yeah,
So,
yeah.
yeah.
That's, sorry, my poor postman's been traumatized again. I had to hit the mute. Happens on a regular basis.
Yeah,
But
it
no,
happens
I
here
think
too now.
I know. I think that's really, it's very important. And I think, we're making inroads with menopause in the workplace. Is it as fast as any of us would like? God, no. But look, at least we are. Like, I'm talking in a lot of corporates this month, next month, for the
Mm,
next few months, which is just great. And that is part of opening the conversation, because I know for a fact with some workplace that I've worked with, that when I go in and do a talk, I have gotten the feedback that line managers will be approached, that they will be approached afterwards by, an employee will say, X, Y, or Z, and they'll
mm,
they'll they'll because the employer has brought in that opening conversation, they'll feel more comfortable to have the confidence to
yeah,
to to start that. But I think, like, um it's always so helpful to all of us when we hear somebody else's story, like you're mentioning there, the different people you work with,
mm,
because hearing, like, I would see that a lot, Jane, when I do talks, whether it's online now or it's in, when it used to be in rooms and stuff, women
what are
visibly.
they?
Yeah, what those days, women,
Yeah,
women, women. I could visibly, I'd see relief when I start talking about confidence or brain fog or libido or any of the other issues in menopause. You can see the relief, because they're like, "God, it's not just
it's not
me. I'm
just
not
me.
on my own,"
Yeah,
and
yeah,
that to me goes a long way to
yeah,
actually. It's a long step. It's a big step in the process. So having the conversation in the workplace is
yeah.
part is part of that,
Yeah, I
certainly.
know. I
So,
think the more conversations that we can have, and
mm,
I think employee resource groups are also interesting spaces in the workplace. I think sometimes they get a bad rap, but it does allow groups of people with common interests to come
to
together.
get, yeah, yeah,
Middle-aged women go, well, it's not just me. It is absolutely melting in here, and
yeah,
can we
yeah,
figure out how to
yeah,
turn the temperature down. I've been known to have to leave the office and peel off a few
yeah,
layers.
yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
that's
yeah.
grand in the home office environment, but obviously you
Yeah,
can't.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So I
It's
think the
all. the different challenges, and I think that's where, you know, it's so important to me that that women just really stand up for themselves more, you know, in that you know, that quietly confident, firm way, you know, whatever it is. You don't have to be a bull in a china shop. I don't think that's the aim, but I think it's more just to understand your worth. You know, I think that's so important, to understand your worth, and also have compassion for yourself, because menopause for many women is not easy. And you know, I think you've got to just go gently. And forever, I'm saying that a lot these days, is just go gently with yourself, because you know, it does have its challenges. So if you're in the workplace, you do need to get support, if you need support from your employer, and the key is, you know, starting that conversation, you know.
I think the social capital piece is relevant here, because you know, lots of people make very good friendships in the workplace, and that's fine, but you don't always find your tribe in the workplace, and particularly in the tech space, which is, you know, where largely where I work. Often they might be the only woman in the room, you know. Unfortunately, you know, as the age goes up, the women thin out, as we mentioned, you know, leaving to go to more conducive environments. But you know, I think one of the thing about the employee resource group, or coming to a workshop like ours, is we've asked, you know, have you experience of the gender pay gap? Have you experienced discrimination? So we're creating a very safe environment for people to explore those things if they want to share. We've had very moving conversations, and people going, "Oh my God, you know, I thought it was just me." No, it's not just you, you know. So I mean, we've had people who discovered that they were paid more, that their direct reports were paid more than them. You know, people had to hand in their notice before their pay was actually addressed. I mean, we've had all sorts of things. So I think there is that sharing piece, you know, which is one of the things that I like that you're doing, is, you know, it's opening up the conversation so that people can say, well, this is what I'm experiencing. You know, is it just me? Do I need to go down the medical route, or HRT, or whatever it is? You know, so the better we get at bringing the whole person to work and having those conversations, I think the stronger we make the workplaces.
Big time. And Jane, your course, it's not just about negotiations in terms of pay, it's negotiation in general, right? Is that fair to say?
There's three sort of reasons you'd negotiate: to, you know, resolve a problem, address a need, and also to build trust. I mean, it does help you with the social capital piece over time. You know, so there are people who come who are interested in the salary aspect of it. Probably, to be honest, more pay and benefits. You know, looking for flexibility. Working from home was a big one. But also,
COVID had sorted that one.
COVID has sorted that one. Yeah, hooray! The silver lining, COVID silver lining. But all sorts of negotiating, all sorts of things. You know, the around the social capital piece, like from a career progression perspective, it's, you know, can I come to that meeting with senior leaders, or, you know, could I lead that project? And we address the barriers of, you know, people being seen too pushy, because you can't, you know, one of the tips is that women should focus on their own career development rather than being ambitious in the sense of knocking someone out. So I would be interested in considering leading the project over there if that happens. You know, I want your job, I want to be the next Julia. I'm interested in exploring, you know, whether I'd be good at that. You know, so it's more about, you know, sort of skill development and talent development rather than outright ambition.
It sounds.
Sorry, go ahead.
It sounds great. I mean, it really does. Like I certainly know. I would have had my challenges when I was in the corporate world. I was over 20 years, so you definitely different points. So it's a great tool to have for women in the workplace. It really is. So fair dues to you. Hats off.
Yeah, no, thanks.
It's really great.
We got really wonderful feedback, and the people absolutely love it. And I think the thing that's different about it is that it's live and collaborative. You know, we do career coaching. I have myself and a co-facilitator, Deirdre Colbert. So it's small groups, live coaching feedback, and people have been like, "Oh yeah, I
Yeah, it
like that
sounds great.
message,"
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
the feedback has been very rewarding for us.
Brilliant.
Very rewarding. Yeah,
Great.
yeah.
Well,
Trying to
listen,
step
thanks.
out here now.
That's lovely. Yeah, thanks a million for sharing with
Not
us.
at
And what
all.
we'll do
Hopefully, it's
is
helpful.
I'll share the link, because I think you mentioned you have a course starting on the 1st of
Yeah,
March.
we're starting on the 1st of March. We have an early bird till the 22nd of February.
Okay.
And we start and finish on time because we know people have other responsibilities.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
very collaborative, and it's fun. It's fun.
Great, great. Okay, well, I'll post the details with this as
Yeah,
well, and that would be
that'd be great,
great.
Kat.
And yeah, we'll keep watching the great work that you're up to. It's great.
Very good.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah.
Okay, thanks everyone for
Thanks very
watching,
much,
and
Catherine.
you're welcome. Thanks, Jane.